Okay.
All right.
So
now
if you guys want to share that, you can. And then we are live on the NBC Facebook, unless I'm supposed to go to yours, I guess.
I mean, you could if you want to.
Okay, I'll do that too.
But you could also just do it to yours and I can repost it. It's fine.
Okay.
That's what I did
Let's
last
do that
time.
now for speed, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I did last time.
Okay. So it's going up right now. All right. So I'm going to connect the chat. So to anyone who might be joining us, first of all, welcome. And if you are able to share the show, we would appreciate that. But more than anything, we just want you to participate. So while the show's going on, if you have something to say, comment below the video on the YouTube or the Facebook page on NBC, and we'll put your comments on screen. And they may or may not respond.
We'll try our best.
We're gonna try. It's a work in progress.
All right, guys. So just give me 20 seconds. We're good to go.
Cool. Gabe, what are your thoughts on nails that aren't manicured? Are you like a fingernail polish, fake nail kind of guy?
I'd say I'm more against when they have the really long fakey ones.
Yeah.
You know, but no, I'd say I just don't care that much. And I think that's how most guys are. It's like how haircuts, like they're for other women and not for us. Like as long as you don't have bangs, we're good.
Bangs?
As guys.
I think I hear from a lot of men, and maybe this is a generational thing, that men really like nice looking hands and feet.
I hear more about feet than hands.
I mean, they got to be like,
clean.
You don't want them to be right. Certainly not.
But I was meant like done. Like I mean like nail shop every 3 weeks.
That does not. Like I've never had a conversation with another man who has mentioned that. Ever. Never even heard anyone bring it up.
Love that for it. Y'all. I feel like I've never really messed with a guy who really asked me to get my nails done.
Do you care about guys who do that?
I don't, but I do. I don't like long fingernails on men. It's not my favorite thing.
It's disgusting.
Or even medium. I really like them short.
Have you ever got to a point in a relationship where you would cut somebody else's toenails?
Yes.
I wouldn't let a woman touch my feet.
Really?
Oh, I'd be so self-conscious.
I'm that person though. I'm like, oh, let me give you a facial. Let me take the tweezers out and dig out your ingrowns. That's totally me.
And and that's.
Gervais is like, who are you?
I'm just like, yeah.
I want to
the ingrowns was too much for me. The toenails.
Or the blackheads when when they shave and they get blackheads from in their beard. No, okay, no. Just me. Okay, never mind. Gabe, you know about that?
Just connecting the chat, and then we're good.
We're on the bottom.
Thank you. There's the number for you guys to check your phone, which it just does this the first couple times.
I really think you fuck with me. I sent a band, but that wasn't in the plan. I just really like your company. Mine is your company. Your man told me, pull up my pants like I was wearing dungarees. Now you understand like you was under me. Get under 3 bands, my man's is a fan. Now you understand, let's hit another scene. What it bands and
all right.
For the night.
You guys can take it away whenever you wish.
Hi. How you doing?
No, it'll be all right.
No, we gotta do our thing. Hi, welcome to Therapy Rebranded. We're consistently inconsistent.
Ding.
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 How are you?
I knew it.
You want me to go first? That's all you asked.
I know.
I can go first.
Yeah, you can go first.
How am I? I am feeling...
Wait, let me ask.
Oh.
How are you?
I am feeling content, and
Wait, I have to ask a question already.
Okay.
Is there any other word for good that is other than content? Because I'm so fucking tired of hearing content.
I didn't think content was good. Is it good? I thought it was
I feel like when I'm in supervision or in other group settings with therapists, if they're like, good isn't a feeling. So they're like, content is the feeling version of good.
Gabe, can you pull up a feelings wheel? You can just put that into Google, feelings wheel.
I have a feelings wheel up all the time.
Okay.
At all times I've got one.
Just for you?
Let's see. Yeah.
I love that.
To define myself. No,
wow.
I don't.
I think that's amazing.
Let's see. Here it comes. And I can put it on screen for the audience, too.
Yes, that's what we want.
Okay, yeah. Just give me a
The
second.
Gottman one is right in the middle. I know that
Which one? This one right here?
Yes.
Okay, so let me go like this.
We laminate those at the hospital so the kids can't chew on them. Or if they do, they don't get wet. Like, think about the littles. And we have a bunch of ones with faces on them.
Do you want to explain what these are for anyone who might not know as I'm pulling it up?
You want to explain?
I mean,
I
it's
can't
kinda...
see from here is the problem, but normally what is on a feelings wheel
I'll pull mine up.
is
Here, I'll move this.
it starts out small. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different main.
It's just a bunch of different expressive words for like 6 general emotions.
and it gets more and more minute as you go out.
It gets more detailed as you go out. And so if you're not sure kind of specifically what you're feeling, you can start from the middle, pick the general emotion you have and go from there. So they say that there's a bunch of words for happy, but I'm going to say I actually
they're happy, sad, angry, fearful,
fulfilled.
This is a detailed one.
surprised.
I feel fulfilled.
Oh, I like that.
There you go. Look at the wheel so you can pick one. How do you feel?
Oh my gosh, I'm so blind. Oh wait, I can see it. Okay. Hold on. I am feeling, Gabe, you're going next.
Okay.
I'm feeling eager. I'm going to give you one more.
Okay.
A little bit. I'm looking for a certain area, but I'm not.
I'm about to start teasing you because literally for 2 years you've been saying all you need is a feelings wheel the whole time I've known you. And now there's a feelings wheel and you still can't pick a feeling.
I know.
This is not about the words or the wheel.
Overwhelmed. Overwhelmed.
Gabe.
I'm feeling. I'm feeling. I think a little bit. Oh man, hang on.
See?
Sorry, this is hard. Yeah.
No, see?
Okay, a little bit. I was feeling isolated last night.
Oh.
Yeah.
Only because I'm just doing a ton of editing by myself. And
yeah.
it's like you feel like the world is going on without you and you're sitting down here fucking editing all the time.
Totally.
So that, but overall, good.
Good. Glad
But
to hear it.
overwhelmed. Always overwhelmed.
Yes.
Always too much shit to do.
You showed up overwhelmed in a
Oh,
shame
big time.
spiral.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's like
It's righting
washed
itself.
off. All right, good. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling. There we go. We finally did it.
Okay,
and I just know you now I literally want to assign to you like the kids. I need you to do a check-in in the morning before you go to work. Like this is getting ridiculous. A wheel was up and you couldn't do it.
I know. Stop yelling at me.
You couldn't do it, Rachel, but I believe in you.
Thank you.
I love you.
Fuck off. Respectfully.
How am I
but you're
doing? This weekend was one of those weekends where you had permission to like do nothing all weekend and kind of be inside. It was very gloomy.
But it's our favorite weather.
It was great. No, it was great.
It's our favorite weather.
So I don't know. I've been watching Suits
Ooh.
and
The finest white man on earth.
Harvey Specter.
Yes.
He's up there.
He's
He's up there. So I was watching Suits, and not that Suits is necessarily believable. I wouldn't say it's like
They make you feel like it's believable, though. Have you seen all the memes about people thinking that they're lawyers after watching Suits? All like the black people with like their briefcases, like me after watching 5 seasons of Suits.
Yes, it is. Yes, but like they entered like the last couple seasons, and like they've been doing flashbacks to their childhood. It's kind of like Harvey is this mysterious cool guy, and it's like, you know, so far into the show, like 100 episodes into the show before you start to see like his kind of facade crack. So he ends up going to therapy, and he's seeing this therapist. Gabe, can you pull up he's seeing this therapist, and
It's always this bitch.
he goes to
always
therapy with her, and she like helps him work through his mommy issues. And then they're done for a year, and then he pops up out of nowhere and
Mommy
is like, I want
wound.
you to be my woman. And she was pretty much like, well, we can't. And he was like, actually, I timed it and we can. Obviously, legal jargon, blah, 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 blah. And he's like so deeply in love with her. And I find it so disgusting.
It's disgusting. And also in the show, I'm guessing they didn't even make like the A game. Like, even if you would just go to like, this is literally a reflection of like intimacy in a therapeutic relationship. Like,
What do you mean by that?
you just automatically go to that as the therapist. Like in the show, is she like giving unrequited love?
In the show, she's just doing the whole, like, this isn't really about me, but then he's Harvey Specter, so he convinces her it's about him. The thing about it for
That
me...
for me is the most toxic male trope for women, and that women believe, I think.
Which one?
That one. That he's like so aloof and so this and so that, and then he changes for you.
Well, she fixed him in therapy. This isn't real, right? So like it's this concept that like
he was stressed out.
He was emotionally unavailable and she taught him how to be emotionally available. And for me, the reason why it was like so disgusting is because you will never ever ever, and maybe relationships aren't even anyways, but you'll never be on equal footing with him ever.
No.
You know exactly how his mind works front and back. He disclosed things to you that he would never have disclosed if you guys were just casually dating. And
it's intimacy like way faster than you would get in like a regular relationship.
Yes.
You're digging into things that you wouldn't know probably until way, way, way later down the road. And the feeling of like, even it's his first time in therapy too. You don't even know, he's never experienced this type of intimacy with anybody else before. And she's going, oh my God.
It's like he doesn't...
I would feel irate.
He doesn't even know if what she did was special because he's never been in therapy before. Like, he doesn't even know if he would have fallen in love with another pretty...
duplicated it before.
Which is an accent, too. So they're like, she's going to be super hot and mysterious.
They made her like sexy Orna.
And she... To me, yes.
Is this the guy that you guys think is like the sexiest white guy?
Okay, this is not a sexy picture. He looks kind of constipated here. But in general, if you pull up
Harvey Specter.
Super bit like...
No, pull up a different
one. He
one.
looks like a generic standard issue white guy.
Some of them are fine. John Krasinski is really cute.
He is the standard issue white guy. That's the point. He's not the interesting looking one. He's standard issue. He's like the Ken doll.
And
he's like, well, Ryan Gosling.
Exactly.
I accept that.
Yeah.
And even Ryan Gosling.
Pull up another picture of him though. Like, just look up Harvey Specter.
Who's his black counterpart?
There isn't. There's not. Gabe, did you watch The Wire?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so his counterpart on his like equal on Suits is the Bunk.
The Bunk?
The Bunk's his person on Suits.
I love that
Not
guy.
looks wise.
He has great personality.
Yes.
Yeah, but the Bunk is like who he goes up against repeatedly in the show, and then ends up bonding with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I know who you're talking about now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I was like, wow, I really do care a lot about being in therapy and the ethics of therapy because I was appalled, literally appalled. I was angry.
Have you ever seen what's it called?
What?
In Treatment?
I never watched that show.
With the white guy therapist?
And I watched like the clips that we were forced to watch.
If you want to be made mad expeditiously as a therapist, tune the fuck in.
Okay.
Yo.
Does he sleep with the black guy?
No, he has like an emotional affair and I'm like a physical affair with like, just watch it.
Okay. But yeah, anyways, that was my check-in. I was just feeling really appalled by it. And I just don't actually
I was just feeling really appalled by it.
I do, and I just don't think that there is a...
It really colored your week.
Well, you just can't... Well, it's funny because I was watching it with my boyfriend and the entire time I would say something, he'd be like, I know, we get it. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. You actually don't get it.
This is like horrific.
It's like... The amount of sway you have over them is almost parent-child. It's that much. It's that much sway. It's
the power dynamic. It's criminal.
Yes,
it's criminal.
Yes, she had him wrapped around her finger till the very, very end.
It's sick.
And then they ended up breaking up because she knew he was in love with someone else because of the therapy that they'd been doing. And she thought it was going to be over. And then she gave him an ultimatum.
And in the show, they make it so romantic.
Gave her an ultimatum. The therapist gave him an ultimatum. I was like a toxic therapist at that. Sickening.
She couldn't even extract herself.
No.
And people probably think, like, that's the type of shit that they show you on TV.
I think people really think that about us.
No, I think people do. They're like, I couldn't trust a therapist. What if they fall in love with me? And
I also think the number one reason people lose their license, though, is sleeping with clients. I'm pretty sure that's up there.
It's like the only thing you can lose your license for. They don't take it away for anything else. It's so hard to lose your license as a therapist. That sounds so terrible, but it is.
It is.
They don't take it away for anything except for like sexual misconduct, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
If that.
Yes. I think if someone ended their life and you like didn't do the proper procedure, you might lose your license.
Yes.
Might. It's not 100%.
And they might reinstate it.
They might, but I have no idea.
Thanks, Edwin.
Wow, cool channel.
Thanks.
Appreciate you.
One of the first people we had that I don't know. Shout out, Edwin.
Ooh. Okay, my turn.
Yes.
I have to check in.
You do.
Technically, I don't really think yours was a check-in.
It is. I said I rested all weekend to watch Suits.
It wasn't a check-in about your week, though.
I saw you on Thursday.
Oh, we saw each other. I forgot.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a weekend because I think we're shooting. This weekend has been way busier than I intended. which maybe is on brand for me.
It is on brand.
Because I have trouble saying no to people. And also I had a good reason to be helping a friend this weekend. And yeah, my weekend just got a little bit more full. But it made me push me into some productivity, which felt good. Kind of cleaned up the house.
This is your theme the last 2 times.
I know, productivity. Oh, God, am I one of those productivity people now?
Yes, you're a grind culture.
No.
Snob.
What do
Grind
we
it day in, day out. I go to bed at midnight. I wake up at 5 a.m.
No, this
hit
means
the gym and go to work.
it means I have to stop taking my medication and go into a downward spiral again. And now you should
Use your
drag
time
me
for
out.
something else. This is why I
know.
like being a creative, because there's something to put energy into.
I know my energy goes into like work and then crashing at home. I do need a hobby.
You do.
That's not horses.
That's the most wealthy hobby
I know.
anyone's
such
ever
a
heard
horse
of.
girl thing.
You do you get to see the horses often though?
No, not even. Anyways, this
Are you
weekend.
being serious about horses? Like you have horses?
Yes.
Yeah, you outed yourself as a rich
Yes.
girl. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah.
Will you breed Arabian
She is the
horses?
No, we
stereotype.
don't. No, I am a stereotype. We don't breed Arabian horses, although I have ridden an Arabian horse.
Are you going to the Kentucky Derby this year?
I'm not, although I would love to
Oh my
go.
God.
And I have been to the horse races before. They
That's the
are
whitest
really
shit I've ever heard in
fun.
my life.
I'm halfway. What am I? I'm that type of
But
halfway.
now I'm blacker than you are. Is all.
You might be blacker than me. Except for some of the first jockeys were actually black.
Yes.
Were you in your grandparents own horses?
My grandparents own 2 horses. I think 2, maybe 1 horse now. And my grandma is really the one who rides the most.
How old is your grandma and she's still riding?
She is 91 years old.
I'll tell you something about that.
Yes, and she is she rides. Like this is a thoroughbred. It's a very beautiful, very expensive horse. And I grew up riding. So it's kind of like my favorite pastime that I never get to do.
When you go out to see them, you get to.
When I go out and visit, I ride. When I go on vacation, I ride. And sometimes I find a stable here if it's not like nose to tail, then I'm pretty good.
You lost me. Anyways,
I know.
I wanted to get back to Love is Blind because they just dropped the other 2 episodes and I was appalled. We each watched them separately.
And then together,
We each watched them separately.
we were so stressed out.
And then we watched it together. And it really just confirmed everything I felt about Uche and more. And I just love being right. Maybe that's the real excitement, is being right.
But you were right, and also you were right. It's like the whole world united. The whole world is on the same page.
The whole world
There's
is
no
on the same page.
There's no debates about any of the dynamics going on. Everybody's like, yo, this is fucked up.
Yep.
Everybody, men and women, everybody alike is like, yo, this situation is fucked.
So basically what happens, for a recap for everybody who's only following along through the episode, basically what happens is that we leave off where right after Uche and Lydia got into an argument. And Uche immediately is like, Lydia storms off, and you noticed when we rewatched it, you had said like you could see it in Lydia, the way she stormed off, she was out of her body.
So the thing that I feel like I noticed is that, and this is a little bit from personal experience and a little bit just from knowing, I feel like Lydia had to like take space to like regulate herself. Maybe that's not the right word, but
I think it is.
There's like an image of her like leaning up against the elevator, kind of like deep breathing and kind of like trying to like get a hold of herself. And I feel like it really struck me.
Yeah.
Because I can see her trying to be like, not feel crazy.
Not feel crazy. And then have you ever, because I've never been in this position, obviously I've never been on reality TV, but I've been in the position of being with a guy I'm seeing currently and having another guy get me out of my body. And the first thing I'm thinking is like how to get back into my body, because it's like there's that piece of you that doesn't want to show that you're triggered by this dude over here.
Yes.
Because it doesn't align with like, I'm so in love with you. And like, with life and nuance, it does. But there's always that concern that the guy is going to be like, you're secretly in love with him and you want to be with him forever.
And imagine all the dynamics of just like having like, there's like the interpersonal dynamic of just her and Uche, and then there's her and her new fiance, and then there's like the group of people that are kind of waiting for them to rejoin the group, and then there's like producers and cameras, and then there's TV and viewers, and it's like all these layers of people that are seeing this. And I don't know if I would be thinking about that in the moment, but I'm sure that you are. And that that would send me.
Crying on TV, I'm pissed. Oh, I'm pissed.
Got me out my body on TV, I'm pissed.
So she's like in the elevator bay, like trying to hide from production, literally like in the corner.
Like, not my face.
And we just see her like through this glass. And the minute she books it, Uche grabs Milton, which I was just like,
Can I talk to you for a minute, man?
What? So he grabs Milton.
Mind you, Milton is like halfway to heaven at this point. He's so high.
He's sitting. It's like he's sitting on a counter, and Uche is just sitting next to him, and he's just staring off.
He's like, what am I doing?
Yes. That
Exactly.
precisely. He's literally just like.
Uche's literally trying to manipulate,
Fucking
gaslight.
hate Uche.
Me too. And
I've
he's
never
like
even
trying
seen
to.
the show. When I did.
I know. Look at that fucking vein popping
I
out
hate
of
how
it.
he
That's a
sits.
lying ass vein. Look at that lying
Yes,
ass vein.
he's
popping out of
stressed.
it. He's stressed.
All the lies are popping
and you
through
can
his
tell
body.
he's stressed because it's not working. And Milton is literally like, bro, like.
So
His
Uche,
posture's unnatural.
yeah,
Yes.
Everything.
he's ready to
Who sits
hop
like
out.
that? Yes.
Milton's ready to go, and Uche is trying to like present a facade. It's like he
Yes.
cares how he looks. It's like he's tucking in his gut, even though he doesn't have a gut.
You know, the
like
funniest part of the whole thing.
Wait, you're
Oh,
skipping.
sorry. Okay.
So then Uche, like he approaches Milton, and he's the first thing out of his mouth is he's immediately trying to explain that Lydia is not over him.
Yes.
He's like Lydia lied to me. She lied to everybody. He calls her, quote, dishonest. He's talking about how this one got me. He goes, she boldly lied to my face with no remorse. What you've been doing the entire show.
Also, I just want to say that it's such like a gaslighting, like manipulating, like controlling thing to say because it's like the paintbrush thing. What is that called? There's like a theory behind that. But it's like what is that called? A smear campaign.
Painting with a broad brush?
Yeah.
Painting with a broad brush, yes.
Well, and so the thing that's interesting about it too, dynamics-wise, is I'm sure this 33-year-old is thinking this 24-year-old's going to go for everything he says.
Right.
So as soon as like this interaction starts, Lydia comes back and tries to grab Milton away.
Mm-hmm.
And Uche starts yelling like, don't let her control you. You're going to let her come between you and your friends.
Mm-hmm.
So
And mind you, they're like not
friends. They're not friends. So
I
then
don't want to say it, but I wanted to say it.
they're not friends. So then, just like a true rageful piece of shit, he's like dissatisfied with the fact that he didn't get what he wanted. So he runs back over to that crowd, the crowd that you showed in the first picture that's sitting on the couch.
Wait, and mind you, what does Milton say? Wait, Uche goes, I'll hit you later, bro. And Milton says, yeah, in the group
Oh,
message.
that's after.
No, no.
No, he goes back.
Oh, he goes back. I forgot. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
Okay.
Keep going.
So then, like, Uche goes to vent to the cast and starts spilling everything to them. Like, again, smear campaign. She's nuts. She's insane. He's saying things like, you know, Lydia ruined my relationship, which is so wild. He ruined his relationship.
He literally ruined his
He's like, Lydia
relationship.
came on here either to get back together with me or to ruin my relationship with Aaliyah.
He's literally just going around. Oh my gosh.
He
Everything
literally
about it
says
stresses
she
me out
either
so much.
she either knew I was coming or she has supernatural powers. Like he's just taking it to the fullest, just overstating everything. And the girls
Yes,
start defending her. And the black girl in the orange dress, Miriam, starts talking. And for whatever reason,
He flips.
he flips out on her. And he starts yelling at her. He calls her bitter. He starts talking about all of this shit. She's like an
comes
irrelevant
at her
side
career.
character.
Literally.
And he flips out on her because she's not like listening to what he says. And I'm immediately like, anyone can get it. And this is like that narcissistic behavior. It's like you're already spiraling out of control. You're already like needing to get your fix. You thought you were going to get your fix from Milton, and
he
now you
tried to
couldn't get
pull
your
in-
fix from them.
And he tried to pull in what's her name?
Stacy.
To be like, she's level headed, she's blah, blah, and tries to raise somebody up.
That's the racial dynamic too,
Yes.
right? Because he's like he's basically was calling the black girl aggressive, and then he used the word a bit bitter and all of this, and then he's trying to pull Stacy in, who's treating him the exact same way, and be like, let's
And
go.
it's actually the one who started it with him.
And is like, you're the reasonable one. Let's go talk in the corner.
Terrible.
So then Milton comes back. And Uche just keeps going. He pulls Milton again. They have a conversation. He tries to show Milton.
It literally feels like the
screenshots.
same thing all over again. He just goes even harder. It's crazy.
Goes even harder. And then that like plane thing. Milton starts going into this random talk about how they're all on their own dimensional planes. It basically like it's his reality, Uche's reality, Lydia's reality, and he kind of doesn't care what anyone's reality is. He just has his own. Gets up and walks away.
Essentially, she's my girl now, bro.
So I think that's the last of him till the reunion.
Ooh, you're right.
Yeah, this dude's not even good at being a narcissist. He's not.
Exactly.
He's not. And it's
not even good
embarrassing to watch how many times he's changed his story, how many times he's flip-flopped around, and I just like continuously I find it interesting when people like that go on these shows because I think they have a false sense that they're going to be able to control the narrative. And even if you're not that person, you can't control the narrative. Like production controls the narrative, but then on top of it, it's like I don't know how many hours they spend filming, but I feel like it's copious amounts of hours, and you're like emotionally invested. If you're off in that way, you're gonna show your ass.
Hey, bro, if you're off that
That's
way,
what it is.
Literally, yes.
He was like, "We're on
You're
different
an X
planes."
Yes, he's like, you're on an X plane, and she's on a Y plane, and I'm on a Z, and we're all on different planes.
He was like, "This isn't Pythagorean theorem. This is multidimensional calculus." Yes. And Uche's just like zoning out as he's talking. He has no idea what he's talking about.
Different planes, bro. We're not even converging.
Yeah. Anyways, I just want to circle that up, follow it up to say run for the hills. And it just shows how not off Aaliyah is because she literally hasn't been on the rest of the show. Like she truly, I think, was here for the right reasons and bounced.
And you know what's fucking crazy is both Uche and Milton are like quote unquote like successful, smart guys. And yet the one who's actually like seems to actually have like some, I don't know, he's like a nice guy, is way more humble about like being really fucking smart.
Well, I think Milton's probably
leads with
smarter than
everything.
Uche. I think Uche probably gets far on charisma.
Yes. And having made good business decisions, it sounds like, even though we don't really know that for sure.
Where are we at on Lydia now? Crazy or no? That's what the comment said.
I think I feel more sorry for her than I did before.
So crazy. I think they're both not telling the truth, but I think that there is some truth to the thing that Milton said, which is essentially like, I do think they have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I do think they're both like blowing the other one out of proportion to kind of victimize themselves. But I think that Uche continued on the campaign and Lydia didn't. And I think that just says a lot about his character. Like he continued.
No, she actually, for whatever reason, for however fucked up it is, she actually did move on.
Well, basically Milton gave her a pep talk and was like, I'm here for you. But he also kind of said, cut the shit.
He was like, focus on me or not.
Pretty much. He was like, this is unimportant. Like, let it go. He kind of gave her like you're going to be okay, but also let it go.
Literally.
Like, let it go.
He was like, it's time to be over this.
It is.
Refocus.
Period.
He's like, we're having great sex every night. Refocus.
Are they?
He's acting like it. Milton is acting like it.
The way he was acting when his family met her too, he was like completely disinterested in his family's opinion, which I was very impressed by.
Yes.
I always find it impressive when men are like, no, I stand in my opinion. I don't care what my mommy says. I thought that was pretty cool, especially at 24.
I agree.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, one of the topics I wanted to talk about today too was court order therapy.
Okay, let's go.
Pro or against? Can you make a sweeping statement about whether or not it's always good or always bad, or do you think it's kind of in the middle?
I can't make a sweeping statement about whether it's always good or always bad, but I can see why the argument, I could see where the argument for like it's not very autonomous and like good therapy starts with autonomy.
Say more about that.
I could see the argument being, and I think I've heard this argument probably from a coworker, of being they don't see court-ordered clients, teens or adults or otherwise, because one of the pillars of therapy that some people talk about is you need to be autonomous and you need to have choice in starting therapy, and you have to be the one to initiate that, I guess. And
so in layman's terms, would that be like you have to be motivated to do therapy for it to work, or you have to choose to do therapy for it to work?
You have to choose to do therapy for it to work. I think you could be motivated and not choose. But I think, yes, you have to choose to be in therapy. You have to choose to want to be in the room. You can't necessarily be, which some people say is why teens whose parents want them in therapy, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So I could see that too, but court-ordered, I could definitely see why you wouldn't want to see them.
What would be the pro of doing court-ordered therapy, even if you were
You still might have a good outcome.
You think so? You think that's a possibility that someone could get in and warm up to you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had that happen. I didn't love the experience anyway, and it wasn't somebody, but I think plenty of therapists have situations where their clients warm up to them or they get some sort of Or they get some sort of, it's a new experience. It's why parents put their teens in. They think they know better. And I'm not saying the state knows better, but it's the same kind of rationale. We think we know better for you.
Yeah.
And what if therapy actually did help you, even if you didn't choose it? So I could also see that side.
The reason why I think about it more on like a systemic level, and how so often policy-wise, like we're pushing for people in the criminal justice system to get mental health treatment rather than go to jail. But then the flip side of that is forced mental health treatment.
We want to do for we
But
want
you
to
know
do
what I mean?
Yeah, we want to do everything for everybody, but give them a job and give them money.
But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally people who commit crimes, like drug crimes, like violent crimes are always going to go to jail, but like there's still the thought process of like if you do commit a violent crime, like, and you are going to jail, like, is part of rehabilitation doing therapy. Like that's something that people are pushing. People are pushing when someone overdoses or is doing and selling drugs that they go to court ordered treatment. Like, it's so interesting because I feel like most people in our professions would push on a systemic level for that to be the case. And yet when it gets down to the individual basis, it's really hard to provide treatment. A lot of people feel like ethical qualms with it. So it's like, okay, if we're not doing court-ordered treatment, what are we doing?
Well, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't have a great answer for it.
And I actually was going to ask that question and I stopped myself because I think it's a knee-jerk reaction.
It is. Well, Raquel brought that up when we interviewed Raquel Savage. She basically was discussing how, like, when you have conversations with people, it's a function of kind of like almost to cut your legs out and to ask you worst case scenario, because oftentimes,
right, like for
or like
example,
the full solution. Right.
She had given the example kind of when people talk about abolition in the police and things like that, well, what are we going to do with murders and rapists? And I feel like the question is similar in this case, not necessarily, but you actually don't have to know the answers, is essentially what she was saying. You actually don't have to have the solve. Anyways.
You can ask questions without having the answer.
You can ask exactly. And so I think for some reason I feel more, I don't know why, but when you talk about somebody who's court mandated, I think of teenagers. And I know that's not necessarily true, but I think who I run into most are teenagers. And I think the people that I hear about getting most referred are teenagers for some reason. And maybe that's the programs that I also just come into contact with the most. And so maybe I feel a little bit stronger about it, and that it feels a little bit more forceful with teens.
But is it?
I know, and so that's what I'm saying. I could go as soon as you say a question, I'm like, yeah, well, I could see it that way too.
Well, because I just think about like when I'm working with small children in the hospital setting, like we are kind of coercing them into therapy. Like we really talk about conversations of consent, like how old are you when you can consent to therapy, anyways, right? So I think like now we're getting into the weeds of it, but for me, I think it's just an interesting concept. I've only had one client who was court ordered because I only did outpatient for a year. And on like an internship basis. We did that internship together. But I had one adult who was court ordered. He was a man in his mid-40s who had no criminal record. He was a black man. He'd been court ordered to get an assessment, and my assessment was going to decipher how much therapy he needed or didn't have to do.
This.
Yeah. And he had one violent incident that involved somebody who caused harm to his daughter and never had one again and never had one before. And I didn't order him to have any therapy. Like, it was none. Because in my opinion, and I don't know if this is right or not, but in my opinion, I feel like just because of the way the world I'm in, which is inpatient, the only way that we force anybody to do anything is if they're a danger to themselves or others. And I didn't think that situation actually proved he was a danger to others or himself. And so it kind of felt wrong to court order therapy. That's how I felt. My supervisor was pissed. We fought about it. We fought very hard.
I think you're right. And I remember our supervisor arguing with you about it. And I think he was wrong and his rationale was wrong. I could see that from an outpatient perspective. Excuse me. I think if I'm thinking about, this might be a little bit of a reach and it might be a little bit idealistic and might not really happen. But I think my hope would be that maybe he could use that space for him.
Yeah.
And that maybe, it sucks that it's court mandated and it sucks that maybe he doesn't need it in terms of like helping his anger issues. And that sounds really traumatic to have to be kind of like accused of this thing after just defending your daughter and having to go up against the justice system. And so he also maybe could use the space to like talk about that too if he had a good therapist. But the hope of
Yes.
that is really, really high. So I just,
Let's say that all worked out. Let's say that was 100% right. I don't think that outweighs him missing appointments and him being thrown into the system.
Oh, completely.
Like,
completely. Yeah.
The downside of him being mandated is if he doesn't do it, there's consequences.
Yes.
And that didn't sit right with me.
Agreed.
You're not unstable enough that if you don't go to therapy, that there should be consequences.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
that's kind of where I was coming from. And this is another interesting kind of diversion with therapy, but it was a black supervisor, it was a black client, and it was me. And my black supervisor basically was like, I went really easy on him with his diagnosis. And my black supervisor was pretty much like, you just did that because you felt sorry for him. Like, you're trying to be nice to other black people. And I actually think he
Insane.
qualifies for a much heavier diagnosis. And my argument was, I basically diagnosed him with something that said that he was having a reaction to the situation. Nothing was inherently wrong with him. And my supervisor was trying to get me to diagnose him with something was wrong with him.
And you go lower anyway unless you really want somebody to qualify for services.
Yeah.
Like, you're not really needing to...
I'm putting this up on screen. This is from Harvard University.
Oh, cool.
And so this is some stats on it. And I haven't even read through them yet, so I don't know what they say, but I just grabbed it.
Let me see.
It says arrest rate falls, employment rate rises after treatment.
Wow.
At the 1 year and 5 year follow-up, mandated patients show arrest rates similar to those of non-mandated offenders and non-offenders patients. So it data
Statistics say it
shows similar
works.
results as...
Oh.
And also, I appreciate the statistic, and of course I like that. And also, I wonder, like,
Yeah, what...
why is employment kind of the goal mark for, like, what is a successful therapy? And it's interesting that those two things are tied together, I think.
Well, that's funny because you said everybody wants to give somebody something besides a job. So wouldn't therapy be successful if it helps somebody become employed?
I would, but I also think, to your point, this is so funny. I didn't even mean to do this, but I feel like it's a hoop to employment, which isn't fair. You should just be able to get employment just because you want a job.
What?
What?
Shouldn't you?
No.
Why?
Like what kind of employment?
Like a basic entry level something?
Like
How about
what?
they work at your house?
What kind of what do you need somebody to come work on your, what do they need to have?
Well, if
Besides, like,
do you want me
somebody
to sound
vouching
like a
for them?
snobby piece of shit? Because if somebody's coming into my home, I want to know their quality of character. But
I mean, no, but I mean, like, but I don't know what therapy proves for that, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying no references, just let somebody, like, on off the streets. My dad would say that, but I wouldn't. But I don't know what therapy proves to have somebody be qualified for a job.
I don't think
Unless
so.
they're, like, blatantly unsafe. And in that case, I don't think they'd be in.
I just feel like when you think about employment as a metric, I think you would think of it as being functional.
Okay, same.
Like an indication of stability?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes. Which I don't know if that's a fair indication of
Yeah, I don't know
stability,
either.
but I feel like that would be the metric you were trying to uphold, is like that you can, because I think a lot of people with severe and persistent mental illness
Struggle with
struggle to
consistency.
maintain a job because you have to usually be consistent, which is really difficult.
I think you're right. You're correct. And I think about
I'm trying to think of a job that just anybody deserves to have.
bagging groceries.
Okay. But that's not a livable wage, is it?
No, but that gets into a different topic.
Do I think anybody should be able to bag groceries?
Unless you're, like, a chronic, like, you can't, like, keep yourself clean, maybe.
This show is taking a hard turn towards communism.
Yes! Finally! I'm just joking.
So here's the reason why it's hard for me to say that is because I hate to be that millennial, but I just feel like that's the Gen Z attitude, and like the people who have that
I agree.
attitude are usually like middle class.
Yeah.
And they're like, I should just like get a job because I exist, and like I should just like only have to work a certain amount of hours and not have to work hard, and I should be able to call in for mental health days, which is true, but
No.
like you treat it like a 6 day. You're actually sick. You don't do it all the time.
I don't mean it like that at all. I don't mean it like you are entitled to, like, necessarily, like, every single job just because you deserve, like, because you're living or something like that.
Yeah.
I think of it in terms of, like, like with your client, it sounds like he's, I don't know, I'm filling the blanks here, but like a decent dad and somebody who's devoted to, like, taking care of his kid and whatever. And I feel like, kids and, like, 1 or 2 or 3 bad interactions with a therapist is going to color something, and that could just be his own attitude, and that's not fair to him, like, taking care of his children. I feel like you should get to have a job even if you, like, don't pass, like, an evaluation with a therapist because they're whatever. And so that gets into the weeds way more too, but that's
He was
what
going
I'm
to
thinking.
the workhouse in a couple months too, so I was like, what's the point of therapy?
Right.
But no, I get what you're saying. I get the basic premise of like, if you are somebody who's going to be like a decent employee, like you should be able to be employed, and your history shouldn't color that as long as you're like a safe human.
But it's also hard to know who's a safe human.
Yeah, can't pick that. But I don't know. I think like the court-ordered piece is really hard because I think about people who have severe and persistent mental illness and don't think that they have mental illness, and we force them. Like I'm involved because I'm an inpatient in a lot of like court-ordered medication where like we literally take people to court so that we can inject them with meds. So it's like this
That's
range
hard.
of like autonomy.
That's hard.
But
That's
is it? That's the thing is like it sounds awful, and it kind of is awful when you think of it from an autonomy piece. But then when I think about the fact that like every single week you're psychotic and you're not taking a med to treat the psychosis, you're doing permanent brain damage. It changes the dynamic, right?
Sometimes the cot is in jail though, and they pick that too.
There are plenty of people who would pick, I think, jail if it was quick and easy and done and over.
I know somebody who would.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But do they have mental health?
I don't know.
Oh. Okay. Anyways.
Are the forced
Oh, I meant to say they.
Are they forced medicating them?
It is
Yeah,
technically.
it's forced medication. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. We can also force you
The
to eat at the
treatment?
hospital too.
Like, hold on. Are you saying the treatment is medication, or I'm saying like, do they actually give you like lithium? Do they force you to take?
I mean,
drugs
you could.
For what? For forced.
court-ordered for court-ordered therapy.
Okay, yes. So, yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, no. It's not for court. So, we're talking about two different things. So, there's
Okay.
court-ordered therapy for doing like a criminal offense or whatever that they deemed is related to your mental health. And sometimes what they do is they bring people to be assessed by us, and then we'd say if it's part of their mental health or not, which is also something. And then what I'm talking about is like when I work with people who have psychosis, like schizophrenia, bipolar,
And they need
bipolar
medication management.
episode, and they are psychotic, so they're not in reality. And they're having an episode where they're not in reality for a prolonged amount of time, and nobody can convince them to take medications.
That's when they go.
We take them to court, and we go before a judge, and they get to defend themselves, but we tell them,
They
tell the
can't.
judge. We tell the judge.
They're
Cutting out every other word I say.
Sorry, I'm like.
And then we tell the judge that why we think the psychiatrist gets on and says why they think, and then yes, they force people to take lithium and stuff like that. But it's only if you're a psychotic. Because the thing with, and this is what I mean about the autonomy conversation, is like most social workers would say that's pretty awful.
But if you know somebody who's psychotic, you want them medicated.
Well, it's also just like it's permanent brain damage the longer you have psychosis. So the longer you're psychotic without medication, the lower recovery rates you have. You're less likely to go back to a version of what you were before. You're not going to be the same, but a version of what you were before, the longer you're psychotic. Like we've had
Say
kids.
that again. You're saying that's interesting.
So the longer that you are in psychosis, the less likely you are to return to normal.
Wow.
And so that's why it's a fight. Because it's
That's crazy.
And parents back us. It's not like it's usually us and parents against like a 17-year-old, because it's they are like, they don't want to give it up because they feel like they're talking to God. I've worked with kids after they went on medication and they lost their voices, and a lot of them go through very deep depression because they feel like they lost their friend or they lost their power to talk to God, and there's a really high risk of suicide after. So it's like a very serious thing. But like I said, the longer you're psychotic, the less likely you're going to return to normal, which we would call your baseline. And your new normal changes every time you have a psychotic episode.
Wow. Does that also go to people like, okay, let's say if you have bipolar disorder and you're not being medicated for a while and you're in a manic stage, for instance?
If your mania involves psychosis, then yeah. And a lot of people's mania involves psychosis where they like lose touch with reality.
And that's when you when you get more like co-occurring disorders and stuff too.
Yep. Yeah. Substance abuse. A lot of people who are in
manage
psychosis
some of that.
are taking drugs to manage
To manage it.
to manage it.
Which anyways, actually, if you think about it, technically says that if they're trying to self-medicate, maybe medication is the way. I'm not saying it is.
I think it is the way with psychosis. I don't ever feel bad about it, to be honest, but I do think thinking about like you're going to get a shot once every 3 months because you literally won't take this medication. So we're going to force a shot on you is pretty awful. And luckily, like after someone's been on medication a while, they usually agree to stay on the medication
because they notice the effects on their life.
And then they have like 6 months to do the right thing and stay on the medication. And then they go back to court and they could be taken off a court order, which means they could go off the medication if they choose. So that's kind of the cycle and the pattern. But I worked with people who stayed, like adults who lived at a home. I worked there for my first undergrad year or my first graduate school year. And literally everybody had like a severe and persistent mental illness, like schizophrenia or something to that level. And there were some people who had been court ordered on medication for years, and there were some people who like were kind of psychotic, but not a danger to other people or themselves. And so they were like borderline psychotic for years. It just really depends.
Have you guys ever encountered, at least that you're aware of, a psychopath? Because, you know, when you do this stuff, it makes me, I've interviewed people on my show who work with psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
everybody always wants to know if
they
you
are
like talked to
constantly
somebody.
stunned at how, like, I know he's a psychopath, but how, like, you're inclined to be fooled.
How did you know?
Because because they're in jail for a crime, for like a horrific crime.
Got it.
Yeah.
I would say I wouldn't know if I had engaged with a psychopath because I would imagine, just like we talked about mirroring last time, that they would probably be mirroring emotions.
Yeah.
And so they would probably be faking it, I would
Most
guess.
people think that you would be able to spot one, and that's the point, is that you probably wouldn't be able
probably
to.
wouldn't. I do, however, encounter a lot of men who are domestic abusers, and you would have no idea until you talk to their kids and their wives.
And most people don't count that as the same thing.
I don't count it as the same thing necessarily, do you?
It's not the same thing, but I bet the level of terror that it instills in their loved ones, they probably wouldn't be able to individuate.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
I think there's so much more of that than what I was ever aware of. It's insane.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so insane. It's people don't talk about it. I mean, and I literally will run into moms who are like telling me this, like I won't, like they're whispering it, like I don't believe them, and they've left their husband 5 years ago. Like they still have the same psychological damage that they had dang near when they were in the relationship, like just a completely different person.
I have a client right now who I'm working with who is not with their abuser anymore and has a child with them. And
Does the child see the parents?
yes,
Yeah, that's rough.
really rough. And there's a lot of just allegations in the mix and things like that. And we started working together, and I would just use really like affirming, like this is her first time in therapy, like I'm going really gentle. I've like had a little bit of backstory. She's telling me things. And every time she's like qualifying it. She's like, but first or this, or, but it really wasn't this. And I kind of said to her, I don't really need you to qualify what you're saying to me. I understand why you're doing it, and I appreciate you trying to be, transparent and, give me the full picture, and I know what you're trying to do, and I don't need you to do it just at this moment. I just want you to try and just give me what happened. And she like broke down.
Did she?
Yeah.
She was like hysterical because you believed her?
Yeah. And I didn't even have to say I believed her. It was just like, I want to give you permission to just like not include like the extra stuff.
You don't have to prove it. I believe you.
I just believe you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy what that does for people.
I've had people who told me about judges who are domestic abusers, police officers who are domestic abusers. Like
Therapists.
Yeah, therapists.
Yep. People who work in like HR and like places of ethics. It's nuts.
It's nuts. It almost feels intentional. Like you got into that to create
to control
image.
People, to be around people. They get like they feed off of people.
Just like pedophiles, right? Like, I mean, you get yourself in a position to
be around people.
to be able to do your thing.
Yeah, to take advantage of vulnerable folks
completely,
and to just like it's. I think that's one of the main things that people often talk about is just like working with, as a therapist, I should say, like a lot of us don't want to work with the perpetrators or abusers because a lot of people feel like, again, it's this notion of like you have to be motivated or interested in change in order for it to work. So back to the court-ordered thing, I think about like people who are in domestic violence situations and they're court-ordered to do like anger management training or like abuse groups. And people say like 1 in 10, not even, start to change behavior.
Right.
It's such a low percentage.
Because it's targeting, which I know we talked about this with Raquel, but it targets anger, and they're not angry all the time. They're not these like angry people walking around with like storm clouds over their heads that need like a little tune-up.
Yeah.
They like fundamentally have different belief systems than other people. I feel like that's the one thing that I would scream to the rooftops that I learned.
Right.
They're not like these emotion-driven, like they just need some CBT. Like the way that the paradigms that they view the world are off.
Right.
The way that they view power is off. And that totally changed my perspective, I think.
It does change your perspective a lot because if what you're going and learning is how to control yourself when you're angry, and you're not actually losing control when you're angry, you're just using your anger as an excuse to abuse other people.
And to your point about being court ordered, that inherently, you know, if you don't believe that you have an anger problem, if you don't like, you're like, I'm just gonna sit here until this shit is over. It doesn't work. You have to be willing to work with somebody, or be court ordered to work with somebody, which may not work, who works with abuse, or who, yeah.
Well, I think the most interesting thing too is that what people say for abusers is that what makes the most change is a community accountability. So it's actually that everybody knows that they're a piece of shit and is watching for their piece of shit behavior. And like most predators do, they either go away or they try to change the behavior, fix the behavior because they're of self-preservation. So like that's the thought process. But again, that doesn't always work. It really doesn't.
They join the church and then they just do it again in 5 years, basically.
Or they just do it in the church.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Or they get a new wife and they
Literally.
abuse her next.
Crazy.
That's the thing too. So I don't know.
What was making you think about that?
The court order therapy.
Yeah.
I think I do a lot of therapy with people who aren't court ordered, but they're humans who don't want to be there and be in therapy. You know, I think I do family therapy often, where people don't know what they're anticipating. They're not fully signing up for it. I think they're in really vulnerable positions. They're in crisis. Their kid tried to kill themselves or kill somebody else or do something really extreme, and now they're searching for help. And even in those spots, you know, I get into this weird tense back and forth because there is this hard line of like offering services and maybe even being a little pushy, but holding people's autonomy. But we have a really hard time when people don't want to engage in treatment, just letting them walk out of the hospital when they're a danger to themselves or others. But it's still that same space of like, you're towing the line of like, I'm trying to suck you in, which is kind of inherently saying that I know better than you, which is its own kind of issue.
It's all forms of social control, I feel like. And you just have to recognize that that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like we're doing things in the name of wanting people to fall in line. And it is a hard thing, I feel like, to like realize, you know, even an outpatient, that's technically what you're doing. You want people to kind of, no matter how kind of radical or whatever, you're wanting people to feel the most regulated so they can go about their life, work their job, do whatever.
Yeah.
Which is, it's all kind of a policing mindset.
Well, it's definitely I know better than you feeling.
Yes.
Which is hard to have, I think, at times. And I think people are on guard for it. When I work with people in inpatient, a lot of them didn't sign up to have any kind of contact or interaction with therapy. And when they do, you know, a lot of times they're very standoffish.
Do you feel like for you, and I did think about this, like, you know, parents take their kids to the doctor and the kids don't really have a choice, right? And maybe there's some leeway with certain procedures, I'm sure, but I think for the most part, parents decide their children's medical care. And I know there's some, you know, conversations around the legality of some of that stuff, but do you feel like mental health care is different than that? Or do you feel like it's the same? Should parents have the same type of like rights and responsibilities over their children's like mental health care as like their physical well-being?
I mean, I guess I don't know I can't answer that. I would have to think about it more, but legally the answer is yes. Like parents will lose, I have seen parents lose their kids or get CPS involved because they had a mental health crisis and they didn't bring them to the hospital.
And didn't tend to them.
Yeah. I've seen people get in trouble for that. So the law says yes.
Yeah.
I think for me, it depends on if you're a danger to yourself or others. That's kind of my line. That's kind of, I think, where like autonomy kind of falls away a little bit when it's like we're trying to save you. And I don't know. It's the same thing with like,
how do you feel about harm reduction methods in terms of like when kids are like self-harming and things?
What do you mean?
Like, were we talking about this? Like, I know like one of the main ones that people talk about is, you know, when people want to self-harm, they're looking for a certain like pain reactor to like set off, kind of like is the clinical way of thinking about it. And so one of the harm reduction ways that instead of cutting, it could be holding ice for extended periods of time, doing push-ups until your arms give out, doing things that like still induce like the pain receptors.
Yeah.
And some people, I hear some therapists talking about how that is also a little bit social. Like if somebody wants to harm themselves, who are we to stop it? And people even go into, suicidality and things like that with that. What do you think?
I mean, I think my general policy is like don't self-harm, but when I work with kids who are incredibly suicidal, they all tell me that it decreases their urges to actually end their life when they self-harm. And I think that it's a really hard balance to hold. I think the harm reduction model is spot on. I think it's, if you're going to cut, I'd rather you do that than try to end your life. I think becomes a really hard conversation with parents because parents focus very heavily on it. And of course, it's shocking. It's jarring. I noticed very gendered with women. Moms are really concerned and dads are really concerned about their daughters scarring up their bodies and what that's going to mean for them when they're out of this space.
One of the best ways that I heard this in group consult that I heard about this too, and I know I kind of diverted a little bit, but
good.
It's another therapist said that, I'd rather, they were talking to a family, I'd rather your child cut and we teach them, how to do it safely and you can check the wounds and there's all these things and there's a certain amount of time they're allowed to do it for rather than them take pills. We can't control necessarily the pills. And also, even if they stop pills now, there might be long-term effects in terms of dialysis, in terms of all these other things that medications can do to your body and we can control. And so that was like different for me to hear.
I would never recommend that ever in my entire life. But I
was like, I don't know if I could say that. I don't know if I would recommend that. But it was just like I was like...
Conceptually, it makes sense, but I just think that...
I can't imagine like having that conversation with a parent.
That's like, I would never tell a parent to just get their kid weed.
Right.
Even though like if they were already smoking, if they had, been using opiates and they switched to weed, like that's happening on its own. I'm going to obviously be like, yeah, that's a win. Harm reduction. They're not going to die from weed use.
It's not the goal, though.
But I wouldn't be like, yo, you're using opiates, just switch to weed. Like, I think there's a difference between suggesting something and seeing it for what it is, which is harm reduction. Same with the vaping and the nicotine. Like, I would never tell a kid who's trying to get sober to get addicted to nicotine.
Right.
But if they do, I'm going to be like, I totally get it. It's kind of like that.
Right.
But I'm not going to tell a kid you get 10 minutes to cut. Right. I just...
I don't know if I could do that.
For me, I
don't know how. I don't think I could sit with it.
Feel like it's not.
How do you not
small enough to be like lean in?
How do you not feel like? I mean, at bare minimum, like you're enabling. I don't even mean it in like how it sounds.
You are enabling,
but it is.
You are enabling, but I think. If I had to guess, that therapist is thinking more about having transparency than about like, oh, it's like the concept of they're going to do it anyways. It's like the parents who it's like, I want to know if you're drunk. I want to know. I'd rather you just drink at home. That, like, but it's that kind of. Whereas I'm probably a little bit more like, if you can keep your drinking under wraps enough that I don't find out, I guess.
But
and call me if you're in trouble and I'll come get you. But like, no, I'm not getting liquor for you and your friends to drink in the basement. Like I just think there's lines and there's balances and that's just kind of like the nuance that people don't want to hold.
You actually don't have to know everything about your kid's life.
Patrice said, how do you cushion the I know better than you when trying to help clients open up? Great question, P.
That is a great question. I think, how do I cushion the I know better than you? I think that I assume that as a human, I walk into the room with like assumptions and things about people, and then I'm gonna have those during session. I'm gonna have like are you really doing this again? Like I'm going to have that thought a couple times.
But do you say it? Like
no, and so I feel like the thing that I do when I notice I'm having that reaction is leading with curiosity, and so I feel like I cushion. That's like in my mind. And so just so that it doesn't come out, I'm going to ask a question. It doesn't even matter if it's like a good one, but just to like get some space between like the I know better than you, like judgy kind of thing. I'm just going to ask like what is that like as basic? What does that feel like for you? Or, wow, that's really interesting. Or tell me more about that. It just gives me more time to process like whatever judgment I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So it like doesn't get on them.
Yeah. I think the way that I do the I know better than you is really different because I'm an inpatient and people are in crisis. So I have like a plethora of information, like kind of the baseline of everything is like if what you were doing was working, you wouldn't be here. you wouldn't be in the mental hospital.
Right.
But there's a lot of nuance to that with children, right? Because a lot of times it's if what your parent was doing was working, you wouldn't be here. So it's not necessarily their fault, but I often cushion I know better than you with, and I should because I'm an adult.
Yes.
And I should because I'm a therapist who's worked years on this. I know better than you, but you'll know better than me someday. It's an and, right?
And you're not saying I know better about like you. I don't know like you.
I am
better.
saying that.
Really?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I know you better. Like, I know what you want for yourself.
I say, when kids say, well, for instance, the arguments I get often are like, dabbing all day isn't a problem. I'm not saying anything about your use if it's not like your straight up substance abuse, but straight up substance abuse, like high at school all the time. Arguing about never ever not feeling suicidal again. Arguing about the fact that treatment wouldn't work, that there's no point in putting anything else. Like I do the I know better than you because what I say is like I know humans.
Yes, and
there's some general things that are just true, and I think that that's a way that you can talk down, honestly, to teens that you can't talk to adults.
I also feel like what you're saying though is I
have more hope than you.
Yes, but you're also saying like I know more about safety. I know more about these things in life. You're not talking about them as an individual. I feel like,
but I am telling them I know will make you feel better more than you know will make you feel better because that's the argument that we often have.
That's true.
Well, this instant gratification is going to make me feel better than long-term work. And we're pushing back and forth on that.
And you're saying, I know this because of XYZ.
And I know this because of life experience and other humans. Yeah. And I use a lot of evidence to back it up. I don't just do the, it's because I'm older than you. It's like, I do when I was your age, I also felt like this.
And I think you're actually really right. And I think I didn't think about it before because I don't bump up against it because people are choosing. Like an outpatient, people are choosing to be there. And so they just are assuming that what I'm saying is kind of Bible.
They're looking for your guidance.
They're looking for guidance. They're looking for things. And it's not to say they don't push back or they might disagree. But if I give a little bit more pushback, they generally give. And that definitely is because of a power dynamic for sure.
Yes. And then with adults, the I know better than you, sometimes I can't even get it out. I can't even start to set up and tee that up because they're on the defense immediately.
Yeah.
Because they're in a position where they feel shame as a parent because their kid's hospitalized for their mental health. I'm calling you to tell you why your kid tried to kill yourself and you kill themselves, and they probably have shame because a stranger's telling them more about their kid. There's already this dynamic. You have to be so soft, so subtle. Yes, ask some devil's advocate questions.
I'm just dying to jump in with
Do
this.
it. Do it.
So first of all, I sure the fuck hope you guys know more than us. As a person who who gets therapy, for real, I think you guys can lean into and own that more. Even as adults, and yes, you might be defensive and might be whatever, but even in the back of our heads, it's not like I think that I'm a baby and that this person can just mold me into something, right? But it's I want them to believe that, and that's why I'm here, right? Mm-hmm. Is that I sure the fuck hope you know more than me. Even though I might fight back at things, and that's okay.
And to your point, people do use I know language. You say I know this or my brain knows this specifically with kids, I feel like. So both of you are technically right about that, I think.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other thought that I had was, and I just put everything back to comedy, kind of. That's my touchstone with it. But so as you guys were talking about court-ordered therapy, right, that you can't make someone enjoy or get something out of it if they don't want to be there, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All I thought of was right away is so as a comic, all the fucking time you have audiences and people and whatever who do not want to be there, and it's my job to creatively come up with ways to get them in the flow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm wondering if you guys as therapists, if that's even part of your curriculum when you're being taught.
Oh, not being taught.
Not being taught.
Okay.
It's part of the spiel, and you work a room a little bit.
We'll get a kid I'm getting a kid either one way or another.
Yeah.
I either, especially if they're closed off, I'm either gonna piss you off or I'm gonna be playful. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to be stern. But there's tactics that you absolutely use to draw people in because, especially with teens, and maybe this is just people in general, but they don't have to be bought into therapy if they're bought into you.
Yes.
Yeah.
They don't have to be.
Well,
they just have to be bought into you.
And
That's the
technically,
world.
they actually
Yeah.
do talk about this during grad school when they talk about rapport. And that's why they talk about
Yeah.
when rapport is so important, because you can't get people to buy into intimacy, into telling you things about their life if they don't trust you. And if you're forcing out of them, you're not getting like a good therapeutic outcome. And so I feel like, to your point, like, like with kids and teens, they fold a lot to, you kind of disarming them. So
Yeah.
whether that's with like you being funny and kind of poking fun at yourself, or poking fun
Yeah.
at them, or
Yeah.
poking fun at their parents, like they want you to be a little
Yeah.
bit like irreverent.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that works with adults, but I often kind of lean on just being very like professional and like waiting to see kind of what their vibe is in terms of like playfulness and things like that. I let them know kind of my ground rules.
Yeah.
And then I kind of wait to see what they're doing. I feel like I can be way more of a blank slate with adults than with kids. Kids need a little bit more.
I think some automatic things that suck kids in is cussing.
Yes.
I cuss in front of teens.
I do too.
I do joke about cultural references. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
had one kid tell me about her suicide attempt, and we joked about Jersey Shore the entire time through, and we were comparing what she was doing to different characters on the show. She was completely bought in after that.
Yes.
So I think it's just like a willingness to be flexible and use their language. I think using other people's language really buys them in.
Yes.
Like, if they're like, oh, you're listening. You're not correcting me. You're not doing all these things. Did you have more devil's advocate questions, or was that it?
Well, no, it was just kind of more like it was really that, like,
Yeah.
if you guys navigate that way, or if you think of it that way, I guess that maybe that could just be part of the job. That's part of court-ordered therapy, is you got to reach those people,
Right.
And then the other
Yeah.
question is, do you think our jail system works?
No.
That's such a big question, but fuck no.
Right. No, I don't even think it's a big question. I think it's just fuck no. It doesn't work.
It's fuck no. And that's what I meant about, like, talking, when you think about rehabilitation, like, as an advocate, right? Like, I would say that somebody who's in jail should be getting some kind of mental health treatment.
Yeah.
And so that's when we get into the court order conversation, right?
Right.
Because I think with rehabbing, like, I think if you go to jail, if you go to federal prison for more than a couple years, like,
You're fucked.
and you don't have a high school diploma, I think you should be coming out with a high school, like, a GED, and then you should be coming out with like a couple years of therapy and like maybe even a trade.
If you're actually paying a debt to society,
Yeah.
you should be coming out a better member of society.
should be-
That should
Exactly.
be the first thing, and that's why I think therapy is like.
Yeah.
I switched the second we started talking about it, because I was just like, I thought all the, and actually I can go more provocative to throw this out, because I think
Give
you
it to
guys
us.
will secretly agree, but you won't say it.
Let's hear it.
Which is that there are criminals or types in this world that are unreachable. Pedophiles. And I'm not saying unreachable, impossible, but we're saying 95% or 90% are going to have recidivism rates.
I think that you would be correct, and they probably will reoffend. They probably
should
will
kill
be
them.
all these things. I don't know if you should kill them. I don't really believe that people should play God necessarily. I don't know if any one person gets
They're
to take
playing
another
God
person's
by
life.
traumatizing all these fucking children.
They are,
They're
for
putting
Yes,
sure.
and-
Yes, and
Yes,
also,
and a lot of, I mean, every parent plays God, right?
Every
Like,
parent plays God.
like, there's a lot
but
of
and
power.
also there, but there's
No,
actual,
you do.
But there's actual like abolitionist like rhetoric and like teachings and things like that. If people actually wanted to look, there actually are answers there. That like, it doesn't have to be lock people up away in a big building and just punish them forever. It can just be, maybe you're just not allowed to be around people.
Pedo Island.
No, but like that's a thing. Or like some communities that don't believe, there's a lot of communities of color, things like that, who don't involve police. That person gets beat up for like every fucking day.
Yeah.
They just get their ass fucking whooped. And I'm not saying that, like, I don't know if that's enough or not, but for like some communities, like that's what that you beat up fucking pedophiles.
So I think that
They don't get to live in community with other people. I don't know. So I don't know.
the
if that's
therapy
ultimate
community
thing.
has very interesting conversations about this, because the therapeutic conversation around this is they separate the two. So the separation would be between people who have like sexual proclivities that are inappropriate, however you would call that, like inappropriate sexual urges. I'm not using the right language. I'm blanking. And people who act on it. And so, like, the theory would be that you would hope that people would be getting help before they act on it. And the reality is that's not happening.
Yep.
And so then now that you've acted on it, it is kind of like there is this consequence, and how do we go back? And is it worth risking anybody else's well-being? I
Yeah.
can't say it's worth risking my kid.
Yeah, I don't know either.
So
And if somebody did something to my kid, I might switch and be like, "Yo, throw away the fucking key and put them."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the thing,
right?
Well,
I had a
go ahead.
I had a woman on my show who actually works with pedophiles. Like she works in prisons with them
Okay.
and rapists.
Okay.
And it was one of my favorite episodes ever. But she did her dissertation was on a treatment that where they put fetid meat in an amulet around their neck. And when the person sees and is aroused by a young kid, they're supposed to open it and take a sniff of this like rotten meat to try to like reprogram their brain. And she's like, she was just talking about the myriad of ways to try to approach it, you know? And she's like, and at the end of the day, she's like, and just none of them really work.
That sounds...
And she's devoted 15 years to like hoping that there's an answer. And she, at the end of the day, was like, yeah, I don't know that there's anything. And then I said, well, what about the kid sex dolls from China? Do you guys have that theory, right? Like, because, hey, you can do that on the side and maybe that's the thing. And she knew I had a drug history. Mm-hmm. And she goes, how do you feel when you watch the movie Blow? And I go, oh, yeah, I get super charged up and want to do coke.
Yeah.
And then she's like, yeah, that's what she's like.
It makes you want to go do it.
That revs their system.
Yeah.
And she goes, it's them walking up to the edge. She's like, that's the most unhealthy thing that you can do.
Yeah.
So here's my question, and I don't know the answer to this. I really don't. But the question that I have internally that would change the whole answer for me is like, how much of this is about impulse control and urges, and how much of this is about a choice to violate another human because they don't empathize with others?
Right. We're trying to...
Those are very different. Like, I'm starting to struggle with the concept that
it's not power
it's kind
control.
of like reminds me of sex addiction. I'm kind of like,
yes.
Like I struggle a lot.
Oh, that's the least sympathetic addiction in the fucking world.
Well, it's just
it's not.
Do you lay and have snot in your barf and whatever because you're not?
That's what I'm saying.
Pussy?
You're not
Sorry,
exactly. You're not overdose. Like, no, it's true though. And so like
I can't take it.
God, give me some pussy. Like it's not an addiction. It's a behavior.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying is
Right.
like is it the
abuse.
sex? There are
It's power and control.
how many gay folks spend their lives not acting on their impulses. Nothing's wrong with them, but just
Sure.
because of their family or the people they're around, like
because of homophobia.
Yes.
Yeah.
really think about the conversations that we're having of how
Right.
many people hold and hide true parts of
yes.
themselves that aren't wrong.
Yes.
And so now I'm starting.
Yes.
This brings me back to the abuse conversation. It's like, do you beat your wife's ass because your mom was mean to you, or do you beat your wife's ass because you like the power and control that comes when she's afraid of you?
Exactly.
What this
Period.
woman said about pedophiles, by the way, because it really kind of changed the way so my perspective is that it's, you know, people who get abused turn into abusers, and that it's, you know, that there's a lot of just like really unfortunate things there with that. And she said that statistically that is not the case.
Yep.
And that it can be born into your bloodline out of fucking nowhere. And she said that the highest what do you call it?
Race.
Coincidence of, or like basically motivators for why they do that for men abusers was not, well, maybe it can be tied to power and control, but it was that they are deeply uncomfortable with their peer group, with like women their age and stuff like that. And they still have sexual urges, but this is a safe place for them to act it out on. They're so deeply, you know, damaged, insecure, whatever.
The incel thing kind of bothers me. I feel
Incel?
like, so the way that she's describing
describing
it,
an incel
you're
right
describing
now.
an incel. What she's describing is an incel.
Hey, I'm an incel.
No,
No.
you're not at all.
I'm
Not
We're
even
like,
close.
no, not even close.
Not even close.
And
Incels
incel-
don't have charisma.
Incels don't have charisma, and also I feel like, you know, it's kind of a buzzword now, talking about men as incels and talking about this
Yeah.
thing, right? And I can see where she's coming from, and also I feels like it lets men off the hook.
I don't think so.
I think it does, because it's like they're
Men are not off the hook right now.
no.
This
But
culture.
I'm not saying it's a positive thing, but it kind of, to me, goes into like they deserve more understanding of this thing, and they're not being treated right, and it's kind of like these poor men who haven't been socialized right, and their moms didn't treat them right, and they just need to be exposed to more things in order to be normal, like treat women right, and that's not that's not what that is. And that's also, this much of the population is actually like that much inept, right? So what we're talking about is like totally different. Abuse and like an incel is totally different. I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think that's like that's what like perpetuates that lie, kind of, that they're kind of these inept babies who just need a little bit of coaching.
Well, I think of it more as like from a completely different angle when I think of incel. Yes, I think people do let them off the hook, and I think it's a lot of like kind of that Andrew Tate rhetoric where it's like, you know, that kind of behavior around like somebody's doing something wrong to these men slash.
I've had to rescue friends from that.
Really?
Yes, like one friend, like for real.
Rescue a friend is jokes.
No, seriously though, because it's
No,
cult.
it is. It is.
It's culty.
It is culty.
No, it is.
No, it is.
And it was like he was buying it, and I'm like, it is a complicated argument to make because you go, what he's saying is true for a lot of people.
Sure.
Like there's truth to everything he's saying. Yeah, I'm not going to act like there's not. Like yes, women want security on, you know, by whatever. If you look at large samples, right? And men want a younger, hotter chick. Yes, that's true. But it's like. That's not going to give you a fucking happier life, you moron. Like, there's so much more minutia. It's
nuanced.
It's all
Just
broad
nuanced.
brush, right?
It's nuanced. And, like, I think, so the thing that plays into the incel for me, where I'm, like, being an incel really is the problem. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily the cause, but I think that, like, the less social interaction you have in person, I think the less connected you are to your community. I think the more likely you are to start normalizing really weird behavior. Like, I think people's lives become their online lives, and they have, like, an alter reality.
Yes.
That's like what's normal and real to
Yes.
them and how other people feel and how other people think. And that incel guy who's like a 4 that only wants to sleep with a 9, supposedly, like you might actually be really happy with a 6. You might be like jumping for joy to have some woman who's slightly more attractive than you and likes the things you like, or is equally attractive than you and likes the things you like. Like I think
Yes.
that there's middle pieces that people aren't willing to be vulnerable and put themselves out there for.
Yes.
Well,
I
our
totally
culture
agree.
is completely rewarding and fucking up the way like dating and interactions are now because it's the way that we select our mates now. Like, I totally agree that I can meet a 6 and you can become very attracted to someone based on their personality or like I look at it, she turns her body and you see some good side tit in her shirt or something like you go like, oh wow, that's a little more than I thought. And then it's like that's like it's on. But when you're online and everyone's just putting their glamour shots up or maybe they're not good at pictures and they can't express themselves that way, it's like it is fucked up what we're doing.
How much do you think men care about how other men perceive their women? Like, do you think
a lot?
Yeah, like if they were like, "Oh, I'm embarrassed for my friends to see me with this girl."
I think it's the same as women. Well, no, I think women are more tolerant for ugly guys.
Yeah.
We are very tolerant.
For sure. In fact, sometimes it shocks me. Like, actually, often it does.
Shock myself sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, hey, I've been there too, baby. Don't worry. Like, believe me. Sometimes I'm a little too tolerant.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it is very, now that you say it, it's like, yeah, I think that is a big issue. I'm divorced from that now, right? Like, I don't think in those terms, but yeah, now that you say it, absolutely.
I feel like the younger
And it
you are,
did
the
matter
more
to me.
people care too, right? Like, yeah.
Yes.
It really is an epidemic with men not having friends. That's a real thing.
I think people are isolated right now in general. I think we have a serious issue with even the way we interact is not, like, I don't know if I'm older than you guys, so maybe I've, been around. Like, do you see our society as divided right now?
It's always been this way.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. This is profoundly
It feels
divided.
profoundly more because we are in the middle of it. It might this much
For
be
how
more.
long? How long
But
has
I
it
wasn't
been
in the
worse
middle
than
of it
normal?
5 years ago? Because what you're saying is that we're always in the middle of it.
No, we are always in the middle of culture wars. There will always be a culture war. There will always be something. I'm
Well,
convinced.
of course. No, so
Well, 5 years
I
ago it was
totally
Me
agree with
Too.
you.
We were divided over Me Too.
Right.
Yeah, no, I totally
Yeah.
agree with you.
Yeah.
But there's different versions of it, right?
Right. There's
and
different
right
versions.
now, what I'm saying is as a guy who's been around, it is more severe. Like just
In what way?
the divisions are more severe. The people on the left are just as caustic towards the people on the right as the people on the right are towards them.
Sure.
Like it is. There's all this because of the echo chamber effect online. You get all these people who are certain. There's so much certainty in the world right now, and because people just get built up in their echo chambers, and it's like it's it's amazing because if you talk to them one-on-one, you can break them down pretty quick. But they come into the conversation extremely certain. And that's different. It wasn't always like that. People didn't have all this information, and they didn't walk into a conversation going like, I know there's a whole bunch of people who agree with me, so they would come into it more like,
timid?
A little bit more humble. Just
That might be true.
by degrees, that's all.
I just feel like I also like I don't know if prior to the internet being what it was, if we were having this many conversations of this magnitude with people who were across different spaces. Like
Agreed.
your community was in person.
Well,
Yes.
and our brains aren't supposed to take in this much information. Like there's
Yes.
studies on we're not supposed to consume things from across the world in an instant, right? We used to have like time to digest things and in pieces, and now we're getting things like this. And I don't think
Yes.
we're like meant to take things in that much. And I don't know,
I can't say that this is the most it's ever been because I
Yeah.
just think back to even like 60s, 70s, which obviously I wasn't alive for.
yo, Jim
right?
Crow's crazy.
But I just
Oh,
Jim
yeah.
Crow's
And I'm
crazy.
not saying the most ever or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I
saying,
know.
No,
like,
yeah.
in the last 30 years or whatever like that.
But I
Like,
also
during
feel-
Bush
But I
era,
just remember
was-
how everybody acted like Bush was Trump.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
And so
yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
So there
I
there
hated
has
Bush
been
back
that.
then, Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like as even, I know you kind of mentioned like, you've had more decades on us and things like that. But I also feel like even in my short amount of time on the earth, I already feel like that towards Gen Z a little bit, like kind of like things are worse, whatever. And I think it just comes with age a little bit. Like as you soak up time and just soak up bad events, things feel worse because you've accumulated more bad events.
Can you stop projecting on me? Exactly not
Never.
what I was saying,
Never.
But yeah, because I truly don't believe that. I actually think that they're like kids today. If
Yeah.
you meet them, they are so much more. There's so much more empathy among the younger generations than there was for mine.
For
Probably.
each other, but
For each
not.
other.
But think about this. Think about how the younger generations respond to one buzzword. They will
Yes.
literally cut a kid off and not speak to them
Yes.
in class for
Yes.
one
No,
buzzword. Like
that-
Yes.
they cancel. Gen Z cancels.
Gen Z cancels
But
and like
that also comes from us because we were all doing it too. Like I mean, a few years ago.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying though, like
They took it to the nth degree.
there's-
Oh, yeah.
I
No-
think
no
I
doubt about
think
it.
that the lines, the ability to agree to disagree has dissipated a lot, and I
Yes.
don't know. I think that's new.
yes.
That's
Like,
what I think.
like a lot of the kids I work with are like I have this kid I work with who has autism, and they struggle a lot with the trans identity. And they're not trans, but they just struggle with it because of their black and white thinking. And they're literally like, I can't talk to anybody about it because I'm going to get canceled at school.
yeah.
And I'm like, you are.
You
Yeah.
are.
I told them the truth. I'm like, you
And that's
are.
a real
But they're-
he's right and you're right,
but-
right? It's like you should be able to have those conversations. You should be able to ask something, but
And you are going to get canceled
and
in
you
school.
are going to get canceled, right?
Yes.
100%. That's
Yes.
totally true.
Yes, that's totally true. So I just think it's like different things. Like personal expression is really in right now with Gen Z, and like
Yes.
saying anything that might damper somebody's supposed expression, I think you get cut off. And I think the hypocrisy in that is that a lot of the things that people say are like making them not be able to express is basically telling them right not to express themselves.
Yes, exactly.
I know.
It's yeah. I mean,
I know.
for sure, and that's what I'm saying.
But what if I don't
The
care about
echo
their
chambers-
Exactly.
No, that's hey. Then you're part of the problem.
Is it a
No,
problem?
I'm joking.
I mean, I think I can. I'm a pretty nuanced person. I can have a nuanced conversation. But to be honest,
Didn't
I don't.
sound like it right there.
Why?
Because you just said, "What if I don't?" No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, like, for real though, I do have this. I'm a militant centrist these days, where I'm just like, if your solution does not involve bringing everyone to the table, it's not a solution.
I don't think I'm talking the solution though. I think just like in passive conversation, I think like there's this spirit around, and I talk to often people who are on the right that they're not actually trying to come to an understanding.
Yes.
We're getting in a fiery debate,
No
which is
doubt.
interesting and fun when you feel like doing it.
When you have the energy for it.
When you have energy for it, it's great. But I think sometimes it's like, and liberals do this too, it's an everybody thing, but it's like, I'm saying what I say, and like you can respond or you cannot respond, but I also put things out into the ecosystem assuming that a lot of people aren't going to care.
Yeah.
Totally agree. No,
Like, most people
completely
don't
agree.
care.
There's no.
Yeah.
And that's like having a conversation with someone face to face is much more interesting to me than
Completely.
like arguing online.
Completely.
I'm not
And
doing
it's much
it.
more fruitful. Like I think I interacted with a friend's family a couple months ago, and they had very different political views than I did. And it actually was like a nice conversation. And I definitely kind of, won a couple rounds, which felt nice. And so maybe that's why I feel positive about it. But I also think like the way that we were able to talk, it actually did seem like this person was taking information, and they are very different politically than how I am and how I align and how my friends align. So
I also think it was really interesting. She told me about that specifically, and I felt so bad for your friends because I feel like you were making similar points that your friends make, but because it was their parents, they didn't want to hear what they had to say. But when Rachel said it, it sounded good.
Ate
and
it
I was
up.
like,
And it's something we talked
God.
about. I was like, I'm literally not saying anything. And I did say that. I was like, I just want you to know, like, your kids say this to you all the time, and y'all don't
They're
listen.
like,
yeah, whatever. Keep going.
That's interesting. And it's like even what we're doing right here.
Yeah.
This is like, so my big takeaway with my podcast, like that was life-changing for me.
Yeah.
Is like I started mine, I had not an altruistic bone in my body. I just wanted to hear fucked up stories. Like truly, it was just that's it. And my big takeaway was, because I started talking to people who are vastly different than me. And it's just like we are all way more alike than we're different. And yes, we have differences of opinion, but we've forgotten that the core of us is much more similar than it's not. And that's like I love that you guys can have these conversations and not get offended and stuff, because people can't. It's really hard for people to do these days, it seems like.
I have a question, though. Mm-hmm. This is maybe to both of you.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you, I think. It is nice to bring more people to the table, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And I think about, like, why do we all need to be the same? What is, like, this thing? I don't even know if I disagree with it, but what is this thing about needing for us all to be the same on the inside?
We don't need to be the same.
Not need, and not that you're saying that, but it's like a thing that, like, you hear often,
like,
right?
that we all have that we all have a lot more in common.
And I actually think that, like, what if that weren't true? And, like, what if people are like, what if, like, I actually want my differences to be the thing?
I think it's like the conversation is around finding common ground, and I don't know if this is true or not. I guess Gabe could speak to it more than I could, but, like, I think that there's, like, from my opinion, it's false because I wasn't around for it, but, like, there's this false perception of, like, there was a point in time.
Yes. When that wasn't happening.
You could disagree and still feel connected to people around you and still feel, like, in community. And I think now people are afraid to disagree.
Yeah.
But I know, no. But I'm saying that's like the false.
That's like the consensus
that's like the thing,
and like the
right?
zeitgeist.
It's like when we used to not tell people what our vote was for, and was that better to not share who we voted for and just avoid politics and have it be taboo or have these conversations?
Didn't interact
in
the past. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. No, but I think it's a, if you look at like diversity, is like necessary for growth. It's necessary for our community to thrive, you know? And it's like, so I'm a huge advocate for diversity, but fundamentally we are all human beings with very similar motivations, you know? And for our society to thrive and for us to be personally happy, I don't know about you, I felt better when Trump's not in office to not be arguing with every fucking person around me constantly.
Yeah, there's a definite sense of relief for me personally with him out of office, and there's something nice about whether this is fake or not. I don't know if this is real, but there's something nice about feeling like you can check out politically for a little bit and the world won't burn down.
That's why Biden won. It's 100% my belief.
People like the peace feeling.
Yes, we knew he was a corpse. No one is fucking like saying he wasn't. It's just he's not Trump. I don't want to argue with my parents every fucking time I go home.
Right. I'm not trying to like feel like bombasted every time I turn on like the news or CNN or whatever it is, whatever your choice of thing is.
I also think I have to think a lot less about my political views because my parents align with me.
Same.
Yeah.
I think that changes. I think there's generationally, I have a lot of people my age or 30s or 40s who struggle with their parents, like struggle with their parents' belief system and feel like their parents got taken over by Fox News or whatever the thing is. And like,
I didn't have that experience.
Really have to figure out how to hold both because they love their parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
no, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, I've had to find understanding, through that era especially. It was very difficult. But it actually helped. I had great growth with it because people started calling Trump supporters racist. And I would know, I know fundamentally that my parents are not, but where I realized it was a case of truly of perspective, right? Like they just are not, it's ignorant what they are that they're not paying attention to that they're not valuing that, but they also don't have to. No one has to value what someone else does, and I don't know. It's. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
We need kind of understanding.
You're saying that they don't have any negative intent in following him, and I think that's where the intent conversation comes up, where it's hard for me with all of the white people who voted for Trump.
Oh yeah,
was really hard for me is a disinterest in his racism, and that felt hurtful.
Like it's like a side thing.
Like that's
Same
what
with
felt
the sexism.
hurtful.
Meant people putting aside the sexism and just like you're just deciding like a president saying grab her by the pussy is okay.
I know.
You're
Yeah.
just deciding
It's
that's
so
okay.
crazy.
Yeah.
It's what made me think
But
we're
people
living
wanted
in a
to
parallel
talk,
universe.
right? But people were more comfortable talking about that than they were comfortable with talking about his racism.
I think his racism was hard because I think that some of it was overt, but
Yes,
a lot of it was
covert.
not overt.
It was covert,
A lot of
for
it was
sure.
covert.
For
A lot of
sure.
it was racism in his like structural racism that he was playing into. And then obviously it's very easy when he says things about Mexicans and all of that for you to see the racism. But I think I don't know. I think we've talked about this before, but not on camera. But it's like for me, the way that I learned to talk about race recently that I thought was really helpful was kind of this you have to take all the steps, right? You have to meet somebody where they are.
Yes.
And so maybe a lot of people of color are coming in at level 2 and trying to talk to people who are at level 0 or level 1, and they're like, you're speaking a different language. I don't even know what you're talking about. This is made up nonsense. Like, if you don't believe that race is a part of everything, then a lot of the theories that people have aren't going to align to you.
We're not going to talk. I think you're so right. And even like with that conversation with that person, like I'm not bringing in I'm not talking about systemic race theory. I'm not talking about all these things that you and I would talk about or we would talk about with our friends, right? But this person was really interested in history. And so I can bring up, well, do you know this fact about like when people came over? Do you know this fact about like your family or white people? And they didn't know all these other facts. And so I think you're so right. Like meeting people with like the knowledge that they know or meeting people. And that wasn't even on purpose.
Yeah.
But it is the thing that gets through.
It is.
Right? People want facts or people want like, well, if you want facts, I have facts for you.
I also think I feel like I can define the typical Trump racist pretty well I'm saying racist in like air quotes, right?
Yeah.
Is that there is a lot of people who don't live in communities where there are people of color, right? They don't hate people of color at all. They just don't regard them at all. They're not a part of their life, right? And they are trying to live their life. They have fucking bills. Their daughter was molested. They have shit going on too. And then when people pop in and call them racist, kind of it feels like a provocation where it's like, well, fuck you. It's just, they're also just trying to live their life. It doesn't mean that because you are not, this is not my thoughts. I'm just trying to define,
So here,
I think I'd be curious too, though, like why that difference is, like why
selfish.
Well, but why that disinterest? Like kind of you said that disinterest. It's not hate until like those people like show up at their back doorstep. Or like those people show up on our border, right? And their language, maybe they aren't going to like kick that person out from like their grocery store, right? Or maybe like show like a fucking noose. But they're probably saying like, they don't deserve to be here. Or they're saying things like they need to come over here with such and such, whatever. Like there's all these like rules for people. Like there's all these kind of qualifiers for their language. Not necessarily your parents, but kind of this kind of stereotype that we're talking about.
Well, I think for me, the hard thing is like...
that allude
in
to
supporting
racism.
Trump, you are supporting that culture, that side of the culture war. And I think that, I'm in the liberal bubble, so I probably can't speak as well.
That's your perspective, though. Yeah.
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 I'm in the liberal bubble, so I probably can't say precisely, what are my blind spots of what I'm missing. I mean, I think I could say probably a lot of it is around double standards, but I think it's just hard. It's hard for me because I think that oftentimes, and this isn't your parents, but people who are more active on the internet that engage in these conversations and do support Trump and do talk positively about Trump are also telling us that our reality isn't real. Like they're doing it. Like they're also being like,
they're denying somebody's
victimhood.
reality.
That you guys are victims. This is victimhood. Your reality isn't real.
Right.
You don't have it any harder than us. And all of these things that I think
aren't true.
I think that is just 100% you projecting that on them, though. And,
Why?
And by the way,
Why
I'm
do you
so
think that?
uncomfortable that I am now the mouthpiece for like Trump people right now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
deeply uncomfortable with this. But I'm going to proceed because I trust you guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like that, why I'm doing this. But it's not that complicated. They are selfish people. They are self-interested. They are just
No.
they're
It's not. It's
even
not.
thinking of
It's
you.
it's not intent. I'm not saying intent.
Right.
I'm just saying. I'm saying that
It's
by
not an interest in
participating-
looking at other people. It's not an interest in
Yeah,
taking
no,
an interest
it's
in other
not an
people's-
intent thing.
Yeah.
It's a like because you are so swept up in Trump, you're participating in his culture war, and you are participating in the conversations that he's having, and a lot of his rhetoric, not their rhetoric, but his rhetoric is around this notion that like that pocket of people are actually the only people in the country suffering.
Right, and they buy into that, and that is based in white supremacist teachings. So they might not know that. They might not know that. They might not know that that's what it's based in. They might not know that that's how we receive it. That might just really resonate with them, right? I feel forgotten. I feel like this country doesn't care about me anymore. All those things, right? That's what it's based in. And that's okay, right? That might be true. But the things that Trump is saying is not that. He's implying, and he's
implying that black and
inciting
brown
things.
people took it from them. That's
He is saying
Yes.
that.
That's
Yeah,
the
I agree with you.
And when
implying.
people buy into that, I feel like personally, and maybe I agree with you. Maybe this is the liberal bubble. Maybe this is because I am also a person of color, so that leaves me with some bias.
Yeah.
But I do feel like we kind of infantilize white people as they're just selfish, or they're just this, or they don't have that. They don't mean it this way. And I don't think that black people and people of color get that same benefit of the doubt. And so I don't know if I want to play that game.
We infantilize black people all the time. Are you kidding me?
We do. Sometimes
Yeah,
we do.
like-
I totally
We
agree.
do it to all groups, I think. And I just, all I'm saying
Yeah.
on everyone's behalf is that we're all so quick to look at someone's behavior and ascribe our meaning to it.
That's true.
And that it doesn't necessarily always mean that. It's not about our, all the time. And I just think that, it's just one of those things. Like if you go to a dinner and someone says to you, hey, that guy at the end of the table, he hates you and he hates everything you stand for and blah, blah, blah. You're going to eat that meal. You're going to be watching him the whole time waiting for him to say anything. You drop your fork like, what? What the fuck? And it's like, it's not a healthy way for us to live. Like,
But see me, I would go like, girl, that man ain't talking about you. Like, I feel like that's like, and maybe that's like, I'm being a little bit facetious and like pushing back a little bit. But I think it's like, for some people, dude, I don't know.
Oh, well, this is back to the intent versus impact
Yeah.
conversation. And this is why I say I'm always down to say that the intent is good until proven otherwise. But what I'm talking about is the unintentional impact in participating in
Sure.
that. And it's participating and the people who are intentional. I do think that there are a small
yes.
percentage of the Trump whatever that are
I think
very
there's
intentional.
And
I
a pretty
think-
good chunk of them, actually.
And I'm sure,
not
and
just a small percentage.
And and I'm also sure that the people who were commenting horrible things on our YouTube and Instagram and things last year when we were talking about race, probably half of them are bots, right? Like how much of this is like the bubble and all of the thing, but it just gets back into I always am like, I will go intent rounds and rounds and rounds.
Oh, I'm getting nervous now. We got a bunch of comments, and they're all going to go, who's this fucking racist guy?
No, they're going, are you lives on a Sunday?
Let's see.
Those colors and completely brushing them off is not important.
Nice.
But I just see parents around me. Phones, opinions, and either it's
Yes. Yeah, you should read them out loud and say the person's name, too.
Yeah.
It's
As a
'cause
black
it's an
person,
audio
I def saw
podcast,
his
too, yeah.
racism. This is Gigi Al too. I agree. Trump's racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think I hear you, and I've heard not just you, but a lot of people say the same thing, which is that like we lost a lot of people when we generalized that everybody who follows Trump is racist. I totally understand why people feel like that. And I think if you're on a level 3 in the racism conversation, you know why it is inherently racist. And I think that when we try to talk about it in the level 1 way, it sounds crazy to people. But I think if you were to go
Yes.
into the nuance of like, why people who are stepping into an equal playing field, starting to be in a more equal playing field as minorities are having the reaction they're having. There is a lot of entitlement in that.
Yes.
So that's all just wrapped around. But do I think individual people who are probably over whatever age are really paying attention and care that much? No. I think they're hearing what they hear. They believe who's in their bubble, and they're voting for their own interests. That's like people who have single issue voters, like the people who vote, Republican every time because of abortion.
My dad's that way because of taxes, because he makes more money. Like, I mean, it's like that simple to him. And believe me, I've argued with him 1,000 fucking times about it. But it's like, that's just, it's like, and now that I'm older with a family, and like he's like, well, like I'll make another $20,000 this year because of that. I can take my family to Disney World or whatever, right? And it's like, now as a struggling parent, single parent, I go, well, fuck yeah, that would be nice. I'm not going to vote Republican, don't worry. But you know what I mean? Like I start to, and
I get
me,
it. It's
ultimately,
selfish.
it's like, what do we want from the world? Are we going to kill all the Trump supporters?
Yes. No.
Okay. I mean, that is a solution, right?
But
So
it's not.
Like,
but I also feel like even saying that, like I feel like nobody is. People are saying like kills. That's stupid. Like that's like that's
what's
not, like,
wrong with us just saying that? I don't like. There's this weird thing too where it's like, do people not get to be disliked for their opinions anymore? I thought we always disliked people for their opinions.
Of course,
exactly.
No, of course.
Yeah,
I'm not
like
like a fucking idealist here completely.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there's a lot of people who we make arguments now without thinking about what we're going for. Like
I agree with
I know
that.
it feels good to call someone a piece of shit, but this world, it like, believe me, in the 90s, it really was like hopeful and optimistic. Like, I mean, and I'm serious. Like, I know that there are black people having it. Please don't go there. I'm just saying.
I'm glad you beat me to it. I'm glad you beat me to it. Thank you.
Believe me, I saw it coming. But yeah, I got too many black friends to know that.
And what's so funny is my grandma, who's in her late 60s, no, she's like 70 now, 71 maybe. She's like, she's black, and when I say white people this, white people that, her response is not all white people.
My dad too,
right?
and my dad is like younger. Like my dad.
A lot
is
of the older
60s.
black people I know genuinely say it's better than it was.
Yeah, they do.
They do.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously,
They're literally like,
that's
what are y'all
night and
complaining
day,
about? We
but-
don't know what we went through. All that type of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. I got an argument about bully. They're like, bullying's way worse now. I go, oh, really? Tell that to the gay kid in my high school in 1987.
Right.
Or
Bullying
not high
is-
school. I was in high school then.
Bullying is worse now. I will say that. I'm going to argue for that, and the reason
No.
why I'll say it is because it follows you home.
I had a stutter.
People kill themselves
I had
over
teachers
cyberbullying.
mimic my stutter back then. That shit would not happen.
But
now.
you could go home and escape from it.
You could go home and escape.
No.
Really?
No.
People were
Every
chasing you home?
single person. There was no awareness about bullying.
When
Like,
I
none.
tell you that
Adults
your
would mimic
stutter would have been on TikTok.
Oh, I probably would have fucking made $1 million. It'd be the stuttering.
No, somebody would have made fun of you when you were 8 years old, and then like,
literally.
look at this
It's
little
not
kid.
It's not that I don't know if bullying is worse or not. I just know that bullying follows kids home now, and they're not doing.
There's
well.
no way to get away
There
from
was
it now.
nobody to go to back then. There was nobody who felt like who you could share it with, or there was no safe place.
Nobody
Like,
cares now. Do you think the schools actually care now? They don't.
I do. I mean, I know there's organizations. Kids are so empathetic now, I think. Like,
I
empathy
have a
in
lot of
is
kids
way higher.
outside of Minneapolis and St. Paul that come from the rural areas of Minnesota,
There's
and it is
not.
very
The
conservative.
rural areas?
I'm not even kidding. Like
What are rural areas?
all the way like up by the border, like anywhere
No,
in
like, she has
Minnesota will
people,
get
like,
shipped
travel
in
down
here
from, like,
'cause it's
the river.
inpatient.
Okay.
So like it's wherever bed you can get in the state. So I do like a lot of people who are like an hour, 2 hours out of the city, and
There's nothing. There's no resources for people.
there's no
Yeah.
resources. There's no
No,
thing.
that's
There's no
There's
resources.
no money up there.
There's nothing.
Right.
There's
No, that's
nothing.
true.
and that's where people
And down
are,
by the Iowa border, where like all the kids were sending them home on Suboxone because
Well,
they're gonna
fuck
go use
those people.
opiates down by the Iowa border. So
I'm joking.
yeah.
No, yeah. No, of course.
people.
Of
Yes,
course. This is a
but-
great discussion, by the way.
Yeah.
Please remind your audience I'm not a virulent racist.
You're not.
not a
Okay, yeah.
virulent racist.
Not a virulent racist. You are a comedian who is
Yeah. And I like having these
playing
discussions.
devil's advocate.
We like having these discussions with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
we do.
I believe that unintentional racism exists. There had to be a level of culpability when it involves choosing a leader when you're armed with the facts and are still making the self-serving.
I
Says
agree
Brown
with
Butter.
you, girl.
We agree.
We agree.
I agree too, and I think that's where the like level 1, 2, 3 conversation, right? Because I don't think necessarily like there's just a lot. And there's a lot of conversation around social responsibility and what does that mean, right? Like, is it even really a good excuse, like, to say that it's because of taxes? Like, is that really a selfish perspective to operate from?
Yeah. But it's like, what can we expect people, like, how can you make people care about your cause?
Right. Do you know what happens, though? Like, I hit people with that one, taxes, right? So if you talk about taxes and, like, if you talk about, like, Christian values and all these things and giving back and taking care of your neighbor, that's what I, like, talk to these people about. And they were like, oh, yeah, I believe in taking care of my neighbor. And, oh, yeah, I believe that, like, we should be, like, helping back. Right? Yes. And so I'm like, okay, so then what's wrong with paying for taxes for people that you'll never meet? It's literally the same thing. And they were stunned. And it's literally that simple. Like, you just break it down. And they're like,
everybody's
they don't know what to say.
Favorite reaction to taxes, which I will give them, it's a great argument, is we don't know where our money's going.
Yes.
That's how everybody feels. True. It's a great argument. Like, so many people say to me, they're like, if I got a receipt, I would pay.
Mm-hmm. No, it's fucking true. Like, there's huge corruption issues right now.
And there are. Huge.
Yeah. Like, and it's both sides. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
yes. Hell yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's yes and. So there's valid arguments to a lot of things.
Yes.
But I do at times, especially my coworkers who I had a coworker who was a Trumpy that would like bring it up at work and bring up like Blue Lives Matter and those kinds of things.
Trying to like bait you.
And that feels antagonizing. Like you're trying to start a fight at work.
Absolutely.
And that feels specifically, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm liberal.
Feels racial.
It feels racial, and they only do it around people of color and like what they only bring up like certain topics, right?
I was the third black person ever hired into that role at Fairview. And there's like a bunch of people in that role ever hired.
This person that I was talking to literally brought up, what is it called? The school stuff that was going on. What is it called? That we talked about on that last episode. I'm just forgetting the word.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory, but what is it called when we were getting into college?
Oh, affirmative action.
Affirmative action. They literally brought up affirmative action to me. What do you think I'm going to think about that? What kind of discussion do you think you're going to get from me?
Yeah.
Let me know.
Right.
Right? That's you're baiting me. And that's the thing that like I'm just having a discussion with you. Well, no, you're not actually. You're starting from a position of trying to like disrespect like my humanity and people else's humanity.
Also, people aren't critical thinkers. And so people come into conversation repeating points that they heard on the other end, thinking that you're going to get out of your body. And then if you don't and you have an intelligent conversation, they don't know what to say.
Yes.
And they hate self-reflection. Yeah. And the biggest bullshit thing that I see over and over now that I'm like in business is people love to say one thing, right? And then the second money, like when fucking gets down to brass tacks and it's their money, it can be their personality switches quick sometimes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard sometimes to get all excited about what people are saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to help everyone. It's like, wait till.
What does that even mean? I want to help everyone. I love it. Like, what does that mean?
Right. Have you met everyone? Because there's a lot of pieces of shit.
Exactly.
Exactly. Everyone. One of my favorite things about working with kids is that even kids who are pieces of shit, I'm like, there's some redemption on the other side for you. It's a lot easier to like work with like even kids who are kind of sexually inappropriate. Like you have bad boundaries sexually with other kids, you know, like you're starting to have those behaviors. Feels a lot easier to intervene and have conversations because there's this sense of like, well, you have so much hope on the other end and somebody can intervene and help you. Whereas like an adult is doing those same things. I'm like, malicious, calculated piece of shit.
Narcissist. Narcissist.
Yeah.
That word is so overused, and I'm one of the big users of it. But
Yeah. So.
What a great discussion. Look, you guys turned on the message board like crazy.
Love it. Love to see it.
We love when you guys interact.
We do. And these are people that we didn't ask to come, so shout out to them.
I know. It makes you feel even better.
It does. Thank you, Sebla.
Yeah, in fact, thank you, Sebla.
Yeah.
Brown butter and B-roll.
I love that name.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
GGA12.
Yes.
Seblo, we already said. Patrice, who's your friend, I guess, right?
Yes, she is. She's at work. Shout out to her for jumping in on her lunch break.
Yo, she's loyal. She's so loyal.
She also works in a hospital.
So loyal.
What's a conversation for the message board out there? If there's a topic you want these guys to take on, throw it out there because that's what I'm trying to challenge them to take on. It's great to take on these kind of tough ones. I think
it is. You guys should continue talking about the Trump piece and whether Trump voters are racist or not. What do you think about Gabe's takes? What do you think about
They're not my takes.
Let us know about Gabe's takes. Underlined Gabe's takes.
What do you think about Gabe's opinions that he holds close to his heart?
Yes. The nuance he
local comedian gets canceled. Local comedian gets canceled from.
for trying to take.
For trying to
playing
protect
devil's
parents.
advocate.
Yes. Yeah, that's all we got.
All right.
All right.
Very
well.
good. So yes, I want to tell the audience when we'll be back, or
We'll be back in a couple weeks on a Thursday. I will be back Thursday, the 26th of October.
All right, guys.
yes, and
All right.
we'll get back on the message board. So if you guys comment,
Yeah.
the ladies will come and answer your questions. and I'll come
Absolutely.
spout racist tirades.
Absolutely.
Yes. Let us know what you think.
Yes, please.
Thanks, guys.
See you in 2 weeks,
Bye,
3
guys.
weeks. Bye.
feel really happy, actually. I guess I really like your company.
You I had to run the street. I really think you fuck with me. I spent a band, but that wasn't